We are very happy, proud and relieved to be able to present our new facts survey here, and the following events here at Pop-Kultur will be a presentation of the actual facts together with Stephanie Roll, so myself and Stephanie, and then we open the presentation for you, and you can ask questions concerning the actual survey. After that, we will discuss the survey with Christine Kaker, who I've already seen, but yeah, she is over there. Very good. I was worried a bit that we lost you. She will host a panel with Marlene Engel, who is also already present, and Sky Dietrich. And after the panel, we will open again for discussion with the audience to go a bit further. So for the first part, after our actual presentation of the survey, please only ask questions directly related to the facts and the survey itself. All right, so we'll start with a very short background information. For those of you who don't know Female Pressure, it's a online network and a database that I founded almost 20 years ago, and it has grown to more than 2,000 members from 74 countries currently. It's steadily growing, not very fast, but steadily. And we have almost 1,000 members from the database who are also subscribed to our mailing list, which is actually our main tool to get inspiration and ideas for projects such as the fact survey. And that started in 2013. We were discussing frequently, sometimes complaining why are so few women playing on festivals, and then it might have been me, but I'm not sure about that. Someone raised the question, well, how many are there actually? And we found out nobody had concrete numbers. So it was the idea to start counting lineups and analyze them to gender proportions. And it was very chaotic and very grassroots in the first year, but we made it, and on the International Women's Day, 8th of March in 2013, we published our first fact survey, and this made really huge media waves, and we were actually the first to ever have a closer look at these numbers for electronic music. Nobody ever did that before. And 2 years later, in 2015, we followed up with a second survey. And as you can see, the first survey had 55 festival editions included, and the second one was a bit smaller. And then there was a big question, what do we do for International Women's Day 2017? It would have been a logical successing thing to release another survey. But nobody was really eager in time to start working. And at some point I decided that, well, if we do it, it must be a lot more systematic, it must be a lot more thorough, and we need more numbers. It must be more than the previous ones. And this, then we were very lucky to find a core team of troublemakers who, in the following months since March or April, have been constantly working until today to get everything together. And yes, we succeeded in including 29 festival editions for this year's survey, and the new data comes from 2015 until mid-year 2017. And for the presentation of the actual results, may I please invite Frau Dr. Stephanie Roll. Yeah, and I must express my happiness that we found Stephanie and got her on board, because she is not only a medical doctor, but also like an expert in statistics. And we didn't have that before, and now we are like really solid. Before we always made these disclaimers, this is not an academic study, and please be careful with our data, but now we are very solid, and that's thanks to Stephanie.
So thank you. Well, first of all, I'm not a medical doctor, so I hope nobody gets a heart attack here. I can't help. I'm a statistician in Berlin, and I'd like to present you more the methods and the results of our survey. So we thought we state our aims, and we wanted to know what are the gender distributions among artists performing at electronic music festivals. And we looked at older data and newer data up to the end of June of this year. And we wanted to know what are maybe time trends, because we have data from almost 5 years. Do we see a trend upwards or downwards? And we also like to see if there are differences regarding to countries. Are some countries better or more diverse than others? Are some regions more or less diverse than others? Or does it maybe depend on the size of the festivals? And that we came because we thought, well, maybe the smaller festivals are more inclined to include more women than larger festivals. So the focus of the new data is on 2015, 16, and 17. That is the data that we actually counted, but we also took in the older data that was counted and assessed before. So we present here data starting 2012. And we said we didn't want to restrict ourselves in terms of countries. Every country could be included if there was an electronic festival there. Our focus was, though, on Europe and North America, probably because that's where we are from and that's our life. And we looked for musical genre, just about electronic music festivals, which is, of course, a bit difficult. How do you judge that? I mean, there are electronic music festivals, they have metal bands on stage, there's drone, there's jazz or classical music. And we said we would include festivals if they have a mainly electronic music goal. It's mainly in electronic music festivals, but if the festival is included, we count everybody. We don't distinguish then what kind of music they did. We collected data ourselves with the core team, and we asked members of the female pressure group, and we also asked festival organizers. They got a standardized email. Hello, that's what we are, that's what we want. Would you please provide us with data about your festival? I think how many answered? 20 or so, about from a lot more than we asked. So there wasn't really a big response. Maybe it's difficult for a festival organizer to find the time to look up how many females, how many males were there. So the data is mainly collected by ourselves. And we had a standardized online form, which included the festival name, the country, the city, the date, and then we counted in the lineup how many acts were female, how many acts were male only, how many acts were mixed. And of course, with some acts we couldn't identify a gender, and then we called it unidentified. So we counted them, but that was a small proportion. So we didn't distinguish in gender between transgender people or like fluid gender people. For this survey, we're trying to do that in the future. But for now, what we can present is only a fully male act, a fully female act, or a mixed act. We looked at, if we have transgender artists, we looked at how they propose themselves, if they talk about he or she about themselves, and if we couldn't come to a conclusion after discussions, we just defined it as unidentified. Our analysis is mainly descriptive. We are looking at percentages, and we divide it by country, by region, by festival size, and we look at the actual number of acts on stage. So we count all the female acts and divide them by the number of total acts for that year or for that region or for that country. So some basic results for the entire survey starting 2012 to 2017. We have more than 300 festival editions, and when we say festival editions, it means like some festivals are included over time, like for example CTM we have several times, and that's what the single time points we would call festival editions. So we have about 180 festivals. We included 34 countries, and all in all, our group counted almost 19,000 acts, which was a lot of work. And for the current data, so for the most recent status on festivals, 2015 to 17, we have more than 200 festivals and about 13,000 acts. So the main result is this. You see here pie charts. This is the entire result from 2012. This is the current status if you want, and not much changed. We see about 14% of female acts in total. We have about 79% of male acts. There are very few unidentified acts, which means that we were able to identify a gender in most cases. And also a small proportion, just about 7% of mixed acts. And if you look at the more current data, this didn't change dramatically. If we look at our results over time, we start with 2012 with about just below 9%. This is the female acts only. What's the percentage of female acts per year? And you see a slight increase, the number goes up. For 2017, on the right-hand side, we always say mid-year because we only counted half the year. The other half of the year is still going to happen. We have to include it in the next survey. So this number maybe is a little bit shaky and might change if we do it next time. Here you can see not only the female acts, which is the darker green line on the bottom, which you just saw. We also put here the mixed acts. There's not much change. It goes a little bit up, it goes a little bit down. And on top you see the number of male acts starting from above 80% and going down a little bit. Those numbers, as I said, are a bit shaky because, of course, we do not look at the exact set of festivals in each year. For some years, a festival in 2013 might not have taken part in 2014, and the 15, 16, 17 data, there are way more festivals included than in the previous years. We also looked at regions, and there we only want to show data of Europe and North America because the other regions we think are too small to show valid results. And also there we don't see a big difference. We have about 14% females in Europe, the same in North America. The only difference is between the male acts and the mixed acts, which are a bit more in European festivals than in North American festivals. And then we also wanted to see if the size of the festival has any impact, because as I said, we thought maybe smaller festivals are more inclined to have a more diverse program, so maybe more women are shown in smaller festivals, and the larger festivals have less women, and we didn't really see that. Those rings show festivals by size. So the outer ring with the 13% means that we have 13% female acts in large festivals. And large festivals we defined as festivals with more than 50 acts. And the middle ring is the medium-sized festival with 14% female. And the inner ring you see is 15% females for small festivals that are up to 25 acts on stage. We wanted to look at the number of visitors to say if it's a big festival or a small festival, but that is very difficult to get. So we stuck to the number of acts to define the festival size. And we did that again, not for 3 categories, but for 5 categories where we have very small and large and very large. And there we also don't see a huge difference between the festival size. So that didn't hold up to what we thought we'll find. Then we looked at the extremes. What are festivals that have only females or only males? And for the current data, we only found one tiny festival with 6 artists or 6 acts. That was an all-female festival, so that didn't contribute much to our results. And we found 12 festivals that were all male, which are bigger. They had 210 artists in total, so an average maybe of 20 artists, so slightly bigger festivals. But then we found more festivals, or a higher number, with an almost all male artist lineup. So that was about the results. Now some limitations about our survey. Of course, every study that you do has some limitations, some things where you wonder, is this conclusion correct? Or maybe the next time we would maybe improve something in the methods. So what we did not count is the actual people on stage. We counted an act. And one act could consist of one person, for example, one DJ. It could be 10 persons on stage. So we don't have the number of people on stage, but the number of acts. That's what we counted. And then sometimes it's difficult to get the lineup, especially from festivals that happened in the past. You are bound to look at websites, and different websites maybe have a little bit different lineup, and somebody canceled, and do you count that or don't you count it? So of course the other one or other number might not be totally correct, because it's difficult to assess really who was on stage. Then it's difficult to know if is it a slot. Maybe there are 2 DJs acting as one act but back to back. Do we count at one time, or is it 2 different times? So these are methodological things where we have to think about how to do it, and it's difficult if several people count, if they all stick to the same rules. And what we also miss is additional data. So we don't know, for example, who is performing or who is organizing the festivals. Maybe this has an impact. Maybe if it's an all-female organizing group, that means that they are more prone to ask females to perform. We don't know that. We also thought about, is funding maybe an influencing factor? So festivals funded by the public, maybe they try to show more diversity, or maybe they have to show more diversity because of public funding. We didn't look at that. The gender definition, of course, is difficult. There's a lot of different ways to define oneself as female or male, and we had to broaden this in our categories. We didn't look at non-binary. We didn't have non-binary categories yet. Then we wanted to look at the festival size, because that's a measure of impact. How many people are there, and see, well, there are many women on stage or there are less women on stage. So that's a way to influence the audience maybe. And we didn't look at the number of visitors. I think that's very difficult to assess as well. We also tried to distinguish between DJs and live acts to see if maybe, well, live acts, maybe it's still more male people playing live, but maybe some more women acting as DJs. So maybe that would be interesting to show the ratios differently, but we could not do that yet as well. And then festivals like this one, how am I counted? Am I part of this festival because I talk here, but I don't do any music? Am I an act or not? So for some festivals, it's difficult to say what is an act, and am I involved in electronic music because I talk about it? So it's a different definition, or it's sometimes difficult to decide. So far we tried to look at acts and not at like workshop or panel discussions. Except for CTM, we tried to look at that separately. So these are the methods. I showed you the results and the limitations. And for the conclusions, I'd like to ask Susanne again.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, well, what can we conclude? Diversity has improved slightly, or if women were a political party, we would say we increased our vote by 50% in 7 years, because we were at under 10% in 2013 and no, in 2012, yeah, in 2012, and now in 5 years later, we are at about 17%. That would be like extraordinary for a political party, but we are not. So it's hard to say whether how good the improvement is. But in any case, there are a few festivals that show how it could be done. And in our numbers, these were in particular VIA Festival in Pittsburgh, Internal in Malmö, Hyper Reality in Vienna, where we have Marlene Engel as one of the curators here, and CTM Festival in Berlin. And of course, Pop-Kultur is also very good, but we don't have Pop-Kultur in our numbers for this survey, I think. Also because it's probably nobody counted it because it's not like such an explicitly electronic music festival, but more like a pop music festival. Well, yeah, and the other conclusion is further improvement is needed. So we are now in the discussion part, and for sure the improvement comes with media and public discourse. So I have the feeling, or I also know from personal experience and from conversations with festival promoters, some of them, that first the numbers, or that we said, well, this is not good enough in 2013, the reaction was a lot of times, especially of the good festivals or nice festivals or sympathetic festivals, was being kind of offended in the first place. And then later on, they improved and they learned, and as a matter of fact, as we can see now, they have raised the number of women and non-binary acts over time. So obviously the public discourse is a very important thing that we have to do. And even more important might be to have the concrete numbers, because usually without concrete numbers, nobody feels like really entitled to talk about this issue. And then another thing, change doesn't happen without effort or without will. So if you just lean back and say, well, yeah, it needs time, and if you don't work on it, it will probably take, I don't know, 100 years, 200 years, or 1,000 years. We don't know. For me, it's definitely clear that to curate a diverse lineup, you need to have this vision in the first place. And then we are thinking maybe like some sort of code of conduct for festivals would be a good thing, so that festivals could join a association or some sort of like informal organization and agree on certain standards. We would be very happy to contribute to such a code of conduct. And yeah, and the next thing is, of course, the panel, where we would like to discuss all these points here, but also how the survey itself could be improved and what would be important to know. Yeah, I just, like before we started with the panel, I published all the results. You will find like a lot of data online on our WordPress. You have the address here. Of course, that's also linked from our homepage, Female PressureNet. And these are the credits. And I'm really like extremely thankful to everyone who contributed, and in particular also to Sarah Martinus, who made this crazy work of bringing everything into a nice layout, and also did like the graphic design for the infographics that we have for one of them too. And yeah, we had a lot of helpers actually contributing the numbers, individual helpers, but the core team was one that sticked with it over a period of almost half a year or so, right? I would say that's it, and we are happy to answer now some questions about the survey.